Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a massive file on what might be one of the biggest shifts in modern business. We're talking about that exact moment when artificial intelligence stops being, just an interesting tool and starts becoming the literal foundation of global corporate infrastructure. And our source for this is a huge 2025 report. It's pulling data from over 1 million business customers. So this isn't speculation. This is hard data on how the world's biggest, most complex organizations are actually using AI right now. Okay, let's unpack this. The big question here is, has AI moved past being a fun novelty and into essential, secured business infrastructure? And the data, the hard evidence from these massive companies, it says an emphatic yes.
And that distinction is so important, right? The difference between a fun novelty and a systemic foundation. For the last couple of years, all the headlines were about the consumer stuff. We've all played with the chatbots, the image generators. We connect this to the bigger picture. History shows us that the real lasting economic value, it's rarely created from that initial curiosity. It's created after firms translate those capabilities into reliable, safe, and, scaled enterprise use cases. That's where the value is.
Right.
And we have to remember, most of the world's economic activity happens inside organizations. So solving these huge, often very secure enterprise problems, that's what generates the revenue that helps fund free access to AI for hundreds of millions of people. It's a cycle.
It's a necessary cycle. So our mission today is to give you that shortcut to really understand the reality of enterprise AI adoption. We're going to focus on tangible metrics, some surprising facts, and real-world impact. We've got 4 key findings to get through.
First, just the sheer scale and deep integration that's happening.
Then, the measurable impact. Productivity, business value, all of it.
Third, the global acceleration. This is not a niche trend.
And finally, the really crucial part, the surprisingly wide gap that's opening up between the AI leaders and the laggards. That's where the risk and opportunity really lie. So let's start with just the raw numbers, the sheer velocity of this thing.
Let's do it.
So when we talk about velocity in 2025, we're not talking about, a steady increase. We are talking about exponential jumps. Our sources show this explosive quantitative growth that really establishes the scale of what's happening.
That's right. And the numbers, they really underline that we're past the pilot project phase. This isn't R&D anymore. This is a massive, widespread embedding of AI into daily work, and it's backed by huge financial commitments.
Okay, so let's start with the clearest signal of that commitment. The move from free accounts to dedicated, secure workplace seats. The report says this platform is now serving over 7 million ChatGPT workplace seats. But the really critical metric is the growth in enterprise seats.
The paid ones. The ones with security and governance?
Exactly. That number has increased approximately 9 times year over year. A 9x jump. That is just a phenomenal structural commitment.
A 9x jump in paid enterprise licenses tells you everything. It tells you that the IT and security teams have signed off. This isn't just shadow IT anymore. And it's not just the number of seats, it's how much they're being used. Since November 2024, weekly enterprise messages are up around 8 times.
Wow, 8 times.
And at the individual worker level, the average person is sending 30% more messages today than they were a year ago.
30% more. That implies a really deep embedding into their day. They aren't just logging in once a week for a summary. They're using it multiple times an hour.
Exactly. They're delegating tasks they used to do manually, and that creates this constant growing cognitive load on the AI infrastructure.
And the sign that it's really moving into core infrastructure has to be the API scaling, right? The direct integration. This is where companies are plugging models directly into their own products and systems.
The API data is probably the strongest signal of deep systematic integration because those API calls are tied directly to revenue or, big internal automation projects. And get this, the average reasoning token consumption per organization has gone up by an astounding 320 times in the past 12 months.
Whoa. Okay. 320 times. You have to pause on a number like that. Now, we know tokens are getting cheaper. Is this just that, or is this raw intellectual effort being offloaded?
That's the essential question. And yes, cost per token has come down, but the 320x increase is specifically in reasoning tokens. That tells you companies are systematically integrating more complex models.
What's a reasoning token, just for clarity?
It's when the AI is asked to do multi-step, nonlinear problem solving. Things like complex code analysis, data integration, regulatory review, high-value stuff. The risk they're taking on is systemic dependency. If your product now depends on this, any model drift could be a disaster. But the ROI must be huge.
So it quantifies that they're deploying it for tasks that need high-level controlled output. And the numbers back it up. Over 9,000 organizations have processed over 10 billion tokens. But the real leaders, nearly 200, have passed 1 trillion tokens.
A trillion tokens. At that point, you are running mission-critical business processes on this infrastructure. You are way beyond just building a helpful chatbot.
Okay, so moving from that general API use to something more tailored, let's talk about custom GPTs and projects. This is the organizational layer.
Right, and this is the key shift from just, typing questions into a generic box to creating persistent, specialized tools that capture your company's knowledge. They're basically configurable interfaces tailored with your instructions, your knowledge, your custom actions.
And the speed of adoption here is crazy. Weekly users of these custom GPTs and projects, they've increased by about 19 times year to date.
And it's not just a few people messing around. In the last few months, about 20% of all enterprise messages, 1 in 5, were processed through a custom GPT or a project. So the interaction is happening within a structured, governed workflow that the organization designed itself.
We have a great anecdote for this. The report highlights BBVA, the global bank. They are regularly using more than 4,000 GPTs. 4,000.
It's just a staggering scale. Think about what that represents. They've identified 4,000 repeatable, multi-step tasks across their entire business: HR, IT, legal, marketing, and they've built an asset for each one. The whole internal question shifts from how do I do this to which specialized tool do I use?
Speaking of complex workflows, let's look at the developers themselves, specifically with models designed for end-to-end software tasks. The sources call this system Codex.
Right, and Codex is getting huge traction because it directly attacks the productivity bottlenecks that developers face every single day. The metrics over just 6 weeks show a really sharp curve, a 2 times increase in weekly active users, and about a 50% jump in weekly messages.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. A doubling of users in just 6 weeks. What does that tell us about the speed at which models like Codex are penetrating the enterprise development cycle? It feels like the adoption friction is basically zero.
Precisely. It suggests that for a lot of developers, these tools are moving from being a helpful assistant to a necessary co-pilot. They're not just checking if it works anymore. They're integrating it into their daily rhythm. And when developers adopt something this fast, it signals immediate, massive ROI on speed and quality.
Which brings us perfectly to our next section, translating all this usage into tangible benefits. Nobody cares about 9x growth unless it's delivering measurable value. We need to look at the productivity, the time savings.
And the initial data is overwhelmingly positive. Across nearly 100 large enterprises they surveyed, the sentiment is really clear. 75% of workers report that AI improved either the speed or the quality of their output.
Speed or quality, usually you have to trade one for the other.
Exactly. It's rare to see a technology deliver on both at this kind of scale.
So let's get granular on time savings. What's the average ROI in minutes per day?
On average, ChatGPT Enterprise users are reporting about 40 to 60 minutes of time saved per active day. This is mostly from offloading those repetitive tasks, drafting emails, summarizing documents, creating first draft reports.
And it gets even better for some specific roles, right?
It does. When you drill down, you see roles like data science, engineering, and communications. They're saving even more. They report 60 to 80 minutes saved per day, an hour or more back.
And there was an interesting point about time saved per message. Some tasks are just bigger time sinks.
Correct. Accounting and finance users report the biggest benefit per message, followed by analytics, communications, and engineering. It suggests the tasks AI handles best in finance, reconciling data, pulling details from compliance docs, summarizing audits. Those are exactly the kind of detailed, high-stakes, time-consuming work for humans.
And these individual gains, they have to translate into broad operational improvements for the whole company. Let's run through some of those functional improvements.
Sure. The benefits are showing up everywhere. For instance, 87% of IT workers report faster IT issue resolution. That's an immediate efficiency gain.
And for the teams driving growth, like marketing.
In product and marketing, 85% of users report faster campaign execution. That's huge for being responsive to the market. In HR, 75% report improved employee engagement.
And for the engineers, building on that Codex adoption.
73% of them report faster code delivery. So AI is boosting product development velocity across the board. It's a direct competitive advantage.
Now let's talk about something maybe even more profound, The idea that AI isn't just accelerating work, it's expanding what people can do. The equalizing effect.
This is maybe the most transformative finding in the whole report. 75% of workers say they can now complete tasks they couldn't do before. We're talking about things like programming support, advanced spreadsheet analysis, even designing custom GPTs.
So it's not just helping experts be faster, it's making non-experts capable.
Exactly. It has this equalizing effect. It disproportionately helps lower-performing or non-specialized workers by removing the steep technical barrier to entry for complex tasks, like writing code.
So if I'm a marketing manager and I understand the business need, but I don't know Python, I can now use AI to generate a script to automate my reporting that I could never have written before. That completely changes what a technical worker is.
Precisely. And if your marketing team can now handle their own light data processing, do you still need to hire 5 dedicated analysts? It forces you to rethink everything: training, hiring, departmental roles.
Let's quantify that shift. How much is coding really expanding outside of the usual departments?
We can see it clearly in the data. Among enterprise users, coding-related messages outside of engineering, IT, and research grew by an average of 36% over the last 6 months.
36%. That's a huge new population of what you could call accidental developers.
Yeah.
The challenge for the organization there isn't just deployment, it's governance, right? How do you make sure the code is secure and stable?
That is the core challenge the leading firms are solving. They're building structured environments, the custom GPTs, the sandbox projects, to give people the capability without all the risk.
And all of this, the time savings, the new capabilities, it's all strongly linked to how intensely someone uses the AI.
Absolutely. We have to talk about the intensity factor. Workers who consume the most intelligence, measured by these credits used for advanced features, they report much higher time savings.
Can you just quickly define what credits means here? What are these advanced tools?
Sure. Standard chat is cheap. But credits pay for things like GPT-5 thinking, which is the model doing complex, multi-step problem solving, or deep research, which is basically the AI synthesizing your secure internal documents with public knowledge. These are resource-intensive tasks.
And the crucial finding is this. The group saving more than 10 hours a week uses 8 times more credits than the group saving 0 hours a week.
8 times more intelligence consumed? It just proves that if you want the really transformative time savings, you have to commit to delegating complex tasks, not just, drafting an email.
Okay, so we've established that AI is scaling, it's deeply embedded, and it's delivering measurable gains. Now let's look outward. Where is this explosion happening? Section 3 is all about the global and industry landscape.
And what's fascinating is how broad-based the growth is. This isn't just a Silicon Valley thing anymore. The median sector grew by more than 6 times year over year in customer adoption. Even the slowest growing sector was up more than 2 times.
So who are the leaders in terms of growth rate, the sectors that are catching up the fastest?
The fastest growth rates are in technology, which is still leading at 11 times growth. Then you have healthcare 8 times and manufacturing at 7 times growth. The acceleration in healthcare and manufacturing is really telling. These are complex, regulated, physical world sectors that are often slow to change.
And how does that contrast with the sectors that were the early adopters and have the biggest absolute scale right now?
In absolute terms, the highest number of paying customers, it's still professional services, finance, and technology. They were early because of all their knowledge work, and they still lead in overall scale.
Okay, let's shift back to API usage. Is that still all tech companies, or are other industries integrating it into their products now?
Initially, yeah, tech companies were way ahead. They still use the API at a rate 5 times higher year over year, but usage is diversifying fast. Non-technology firm API use has grown 5 times year over year as well.
So what are these non-tech companies prioritizing?
We're seeing a shift. It's not just about embedding an assistant in your product anymore. Customer service and content generation now make up about 20% of all API activity. That means companies are using it for high-volume, repetitive tasks, like optimizing contact centers or generating personalized marketing copy.
Let's dive deeper on those industry-specific strategies. It shows us where they're placing their bets.
For technology companies, no surprise, their top use cases are in-app assistant and search and coding and developer tools. They're making their own products smarter and their engineers faster.
And what about professional services? Consulting, legal, accounting firms?
They're heavily focused on coding and developer tools, but mostly to build custom tooling for themselves, internal apps, analysis scripts. And their second highest use is content and creative generation for things like pitch decks and reports.
And finally, finance. What's their main focus?
Finance often prioritizes customer support first. It's a huge, scalable cost center with a proven ROI when you automate it. Their second priority is coding and developer tools, but for high-stakes internal work, like system migrations, risk management, and compliance applications.
Moving from industry to geography, AI adoption used to feel very US-centric. Is that still the case?
No, we are seeing rapid international acceleration. International API customer growth was over 70% in just the last 6 months. Firms abroad are not waiting around anymore.
Which markets are growing the fastest in terms of paying business customers?
Looking at year-over-year growth, the leaders are really exploding. Australia at 187%, Brazil at 161%, the Netherlands at 153%, and France at 146%.
Wow. And what about sheer volume? Where's most activity?
The US is still the volume leader, of course, but Germany and Japan are right behind. And the UK and Germany are now among the largest enterprise markets outside the US by customer count.
And API scale, the deep integration metric.
That's where Japan really stands out. It has the largest number of corporate API customers outside of the US. That confirms a real dedication to embedding AI into core systems, not just using it for chat.
The message is clear. AI is now a globally distributed enterprise priority. Which brings us to maybe the most critical finding for you, our listener, the emerging gap. This is the difference between a marginal gain and a real competitive advantage.
This section really reveals both the huge opportunity and the organizational risk. The benefits of AI scale directly with the intensity of use. The people in companies that commit to deep integration are getting orders of magnitude more value.
Let's start with the individual worker gaps. The report talks about frontier workers, the top 5% of users. How do they compare to the median worker?
The divide is stark. Frontier workers generate 6 times more messages than the median worker, a massive difference in reliance. But the gap gets way wider when you look at specialized, high-value tasks.
Like data analysis.
Exactly. Frontier workers using the data analysis tool use it 16 times more than the median worker. This suggests the median worker is still just doing basic chat, while the frontier worker is using AI for advanced statistical reasoning and complex analysis.
16 times. What's the biggest relative gap they found?
Coding. It has the largest relative gap. Frontier workers send an incredible 17 times as many coding-related messages as the median worker. Writing and communication also has an 11 times gap.
Wait, a 17 times gap for coding? Why would the most technical people, the ones who are already experts, have the largest gap in usage?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? It suggests that the most highly skilled workers see the biggest ROI. They're not using AI to learn how to code. They're using it to offload 90% of the grunt work, the debugging, the refactoring, the documentation. They're amplifying their existing expertise.
So we go back to that productivity correlation. You have to use it intensively across many different tasks to get the biggest benefit.
That's absolutely right. The data shows that users who engage across about 7 different task types, chat, coding, data analysis, reasoning, and so on, they report 5 times more time saved than those using only about 4 tasks. The benefits scale exponentially.
So what does this all mean? Even among active users, most people aren't tapping into the full potential. The gap isn't just user versus non-user.
No, it's between the person using basic chat and the person who has learned to leverage all the advanced capabilities. We call this the headroom for growth. The data on unused advanced tools is really revealing. Among monthly active users, 19% have never used data analysis, 14% have never used reasoning, and 12% have never used search.
Almost 1 in 5 monthly users hasn't even touched the data analysis tool. That seems like a huge failure in adoption and training.
It is. It shows that organizational change management is still catching up. But look at the contrast with daily active users. For people who use it every day, those numbers plummet. Only 3% haven't used data analysis, and just 1% haven't used reasoning or search.
So the key insight is that consistent daily use is what unlocks the most capable tools. It becomes a habit.
That's it. Once it's a daily reflex, workers naturally progress to the advanced features that deliver the most value.
And this individual gap is mirrored at the firm level, right? Suggesting a structural difference in how companies are approaching this.
Exactly. When we compare frontier firms to median firms, the frontier firms generate 2 times more messages per seat. But the real structural difference, the one that points to a deliberate strategy, is that they generate 7 times more messages to custom GPTs.
7 times more. That proves they're not just using the tool more, they're using it smarter. They're turning knowledge into reusable assets.
It shows that frontier firms are systematically investing in the infrastructure to embed AI as a core organizational capability, not just a peripheral tool for individuals.
Okay, we've covered the metrics, the growth, the gaps. Now let's make it concrete with some real-world case studies. This is the proof.
Before we jump into those, let's just anchor this in the bigger financial picture.
Yeah.
What's the ultimate payoff for all this investment? A 2025 BCG study found that over 3 years, AI leaders achieved 1.7 times the revenue growth, 3.6 times greater total shareholder return, and 1.6 times the EBIT margin compared to laggards.
3.6 times greater shareholder return. Those aren't marginal gains. That puts enormous pressure on every CEO. Okay, let's look at how firms are getting there, starting with Intercom.
Right, so Intercom already had an AI agent, Finn, for chat support, but extending it to phone support was a huge technical challenge because of latency. In a phone call, even a tiny lag in the AI's response just destroys the customer experience.
So their problem was speed. What was the solution and the impact?
They built Finn Voice on the real-time API, which is engineered for speed. The impact was dramatic. Latency dropped by 48%. Now, Finn Voice resolves 53% of calls end-to-end without any human help. And considering human support can cost $5 to $20 per call, it's saving their customers hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Just a massive cost center solution. Next up, Lowe's. Retail is all about expert advice, which is hard to scale.
Exactly. Lowe's needed to scale home improvement guidance to millions of online customers and, just as importantly, to their own store associates.
So they deployed two tools, Milo for customers and Milo Companion for their staff. What was the impact?
The scale is impressive. They answer nearly 1 million questions a month. And for customers online, when they engage with Milo, the conversion rate more than doubles. For the in-store experience, customer satisfaction scores increase by 200 basis points when an associate uses Milo Companion to help them. It's a direct line from AI to revenue and satisfaction.
Incredible. Moving to hiring with Marty. Indeed, they're focused on reducing friction in the job market.
Their challenge was bridging the gap between a job description and a candidate's background. They used AI tools like Invite to Apply and Career Scout to provide personalized explanations for job matches and the results. Invite to Apply increased started applications by 20% and actual hires by 13%. And job seekers using Career Scout find and apply 7 times faster and are 38% more likely to be hired.
That is real value creation. Okay, let's look at operational efficiency in finance with BBVA. We know they have 4,000 GPTs. What's a specific problem they solve?
In Mexico, they had a bottleneck with a legal check called bastantio. It confirms corporate signatory authority. It's highly specialized and used to require a dedicated legal team, causing huge delays. So they built a specialized generative AI chatbot to provide instant self-service access to validated legal FAQs and guidance.
And the impact.
It now automates more than 9,000 queries a year. That enabled BBVA to redeploy 3 full-time employees to higher value work. That one bot delivered 26% of the entire legal services division's annual savings target.
Wow. And finally, let's look at product development with Moderna in life sciences.
Their challenge was creating a target product profile, or TPP. It's the blueprint for a new product, and it involves reviewing hundreds of pages of evidence. It's a multi-week process. They used ChatGPT Enterprise to streamline the drafting, extract key facts, and flag potential errors. The impact was reducing a core analytical step from weeks to, in some cases, hours.
When you're in a race to deliver life-saving treatments, accelerating research by weeks is a massive advantage. And one more quick one, Oscar Health, using AI to navigate healthcare complexity.
Right. Healthcare data is siloed everywhere. Oscar deployed chatbots that could access all that internal data to give members a single, trustworthy source for answers. Now, their platform answers 58% of benefits questions instantly and handles 39% of messages without any human escalation. It just cuts through the administrative burden.
So we've reached the end of this deep dive, and the story is crystal clear. AI is moving from a productivity tool that saves 40 minutes a day to an engine of revenue growth that drives 3.6 times greater shareholder return.
What's fascinating here is the primary constraint isn't the technology anymore. It's not model performance or tooling. It's organizational readiness. The models are capable of so much more than most organizations are currently using them for. The tools are there. The internal structures to scale them often are not.
So if the tech is moving that fast, what are the leading firms doing differently to get that massive return? The report outlines 5 key habits.
These are the 5 things that really separate the frontier firms from the median ones. First is deep system integration. They securely connect the AI to company data so it has context. This is foundational, but about 1 in 4 enterprises still haven't done it.
Second is workflow standardization and reuse. This goes back to that 7x gap in custom GPTs. They actively promote building and sharing these reusable assets.
Third, executive leadership and sponsorship. This has to come from the top. Leadership needs to set clear mandates, secure budgets, and treat this as a strategic transformation, not an IT project.
Fourth is data readiness and evaluations. This is technical but essential. They codify knowledge into machine-readable formats and run constant evaluations to track model performance on real business outcomes. You have to measure it to scale it.
And fifth is deliberate change management. They build structures for learning. They have centralized governance, but also distributed AI champions embedded across the business to accelerate adoption and pull that median worker up.
And organizations that commit to these 5 habits are the ones seeing that 3.6x greater shareholder return. So how long can any firm afford to treat AI as a peripheral tool rather than the core engine of their future?
The risk of not adopting is just escalating exponentially.
That is the question you need to carry forward. You should assess where your own function falls on that intensity of use curve we talked about, especially with advanced tools like data analysis and reasoning. Because at the end of the day, the future of enterprise AI isn't about the models. It's about the organizational commitment to use them to their full 17x potential. Thank you for joining us for this essential deep dive into the state of enterprise AI in 2025. We'll see you next time.